I enjoy poking around our friends at FanDuel, official sportsbook of Locked On, of course. And I saw something the other day that made me go, ooh, someone's not going to like that. So, of course, we're talking about it here on the show, right? Duh. LSU minus 2.5 at home against Alabama. This is essentially saying on a neutral field, it's roughly an even line. LSU has revamped their defensive staff going into 2024, as was desperately needed after that was maybe the worst LSU defense I have ever seen for an entire season in my lifetime. They've always had great defenses, and they've kind of flipped the script there in Baton Rouge. Doesn't mean they can't be good, because they absolutely can be, but they haven't exactly hit on every transfer target they were looking for along the defensive line. They wanted to get Dominic Williams. He went to Oklahoma instead. Does he go to Oklahoma if they're not going to the SEC? I don't know. You tell me. Just kind of food for thought. But certainly I expect LSU's defense to be better. Is the offense going to be as good as it was last year? I don't know how it possibly can be. Of course they're going to be talented. Of course they've got guys. Garrett Nussmeier could be great for all I know. Is he going to win the Heisman Trophy? No, which means you're not going to have as good of a quarterback as last year. Are you going to have two receivers as good as Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas? You tell me, Tigers fans. Do you have two guys that you feel as good about as those two dudes? Because those two were dudes. Big time dudes. So favoring LSU over Alabama, which has certainly undergone its fair share of turnover from a year ago. To me, for those who don't have personal experience with Kalen DeBoer, allow me to explain how it works going against him. On paper, you should win. You've got the better roster, maybe you're even at home, and then you just don't. That's it. That's how it goes. So this will be the worst Alabama team Kalen DeBoer coaches, and their win total is still 9.5. They may very well end up in the college football playoff. If he gets the most out of Jalen Milroe at quarterback, Alabama will be very good. Alabama will be very, very good. They still have a lot of talent over there. Yes, a lot of guys have left. This is true. They are not short on talent compared to where they were when DeBoer first got there. They have made transfer portal moves, and they have got probably I would not put them in the top 5. They're probably inside the top 10 best rosters in college football, and they've got maybe the best game day coach in college football in Kalen DeBoer. If you don't know what his record is, it's like 113-12. That's his career record as a head coach. He doesn't go through adjustment years. So that line, Jalen Milroe or Garrett Nussmeier. Well, maybe because you're in Baton Rouge for this game, LSU should be favored. I don't know about that one. Here's another one I don't know about. Ohio State hosting Michigan this year. Boy, Ohio State's got to win that game. They've got to win that game. Sharon Moore has never been a full-time head coach. They don't know who they're starting at court now. Ohio State doesn't know who they're starting at quarterback either. But Michigan knows even less about what they're doing at quarterback right now, as spring football has essentially all but wrapped up. They've lost a lot of guys, and they have not had the sort of offseason that Ohio State has had. Buckeyes 9.5-point favorites. Woof. Oof. Michigan fans not going to like hearing that one very much, because that's a big giant. That is a humongous line. That game's in Columbus. I don't know if Ohio State loses that football game. I also don't know if they're winning that game by double digits. Michigan's defense is going to be very good. I have questions about the offense, because I don't really know. I know that Donovan Edwards is going to run the football. I know Sharon Moore schemes a ground game exceptionally well. I know they've got plenty of talent along the offensive line, though they're replacing several pieces. I know all that about Michigan. I still need to know what you're doing at quarterback, because you're not going to, shall we say, Penn State, Ohio State. What do I mean? 7 consecutive runs? You're not doing that against Ohio State. Not with that defense, not with the returners and the guys they brought in. That's just not going to happen. Caleb Downs individually might not let that happen. So I think that for Ohio State to be a 9.5-point favorite. Vegas likes something about what they did this spring. They must like quarterback questions, I suppose. Here's the last one to talk about. Georgia has gone up as a favorite at Ole Miss. They're a 5.5-point favorite in Oxford. Woof. Pun half intended because they're the Bulldogs, of course. So I have been adamant for a long time here on the show. Georgia should be the number one preseason team. Georgia should be the favorites in the SEC. Georgia should be the favorites to win the title. They are the betting favorites, according to FanDuel, to win the title here. I'm not sure what drives a 2-point line movement here to go from Georgia minus 3.5, which to me felt about right, at Ole Miss. This game is in Oxford. And I have been as high on the Rebels as anybody because I think Ole Miss is a playoff team this year. I think they are a 10-win team minimum. That's where Ole Miss should be. You've got your quarterback returning. You've got a litany of weapons. They have had the number one transfer portal class, according to 24/7 Sports. Ole Miss should be one of the best teams in the SEC. And they feel like a team that's got to strike while the iron's hot, because this is the worst that Alabama's going to be. We don't know what Garrett Nussmeier is necessarily at LSU. I think he could be good, but do we know Mike Elko, first year at Texas A&M? Again, they've brought in a great transfer portal class. Is it all coming together this year? History would say it's not going to just magically appear, but it could. And Ole Miss has got key returners. They've got their head coach in place. They've got a great transfer portal class. All those factors line up to make you think, okay, Ole Miss has got to go and attack this season and make the absolute most out of it that they can. Georgia, a 5.5-point favorite in Oxford, again, feels like a big number. Now, I disagreed with the premise of all three of those lines. LSU being favored over Bama, even at home, or at least by, over 2 points. That feels like it should be closer to a pick-em maybe. Ohio State 9.5, that feels like a big number. Georgia 5.5. Those three teams are not going 0-3 as favorites against the spread. Just think about that. They could go 1-2, but the likelihood they go 0-3, not very high. So what? Either Georgia's beating Ole Miss by 6 or more, Ohio State's beating Michigan by 10 or more, or LSU beats Alabama. Now, on the surface, that would seem like the most likely game in which the favorite covers because it's the smallest line. I don't think that's the case. I feel a little bit better, not a lot, but a little bit better about Alabama right now than LSU. So I go to the other two, and I'm trying to ask myself, Ohio State getting its revenge now that Harbaugh is gone, or Georgia being every bit as good as I expect them to be? Which of those two things do you think is more likely to happen? Kind of an interesting question. And frankly, I don't know if I have an answer to that question right now. But posing interesting questions this time of year, that's what May is for. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.